We paid $6,600 for this Origin pre-built gaming PC. Origin's owned by Corsair. We bought this ourselves because we thought probably this is the one where they can't possibly have screwed anything up, and we want to review a pre-built that's done everything right. We were very wrong. The GN curse continues. This has many problems with it, and they are all the more offensive because of the price of it. So in spite of all of this, being as expensive, as high-end as it is, as premium and hand-built as it is from Origin by Corsair, if we open up hardware info, which I want to make very clear, we own a commercial license for hardware info. We paid for it. We have an engineering license. This is from Origin. They're the ones who installed the non-commercial one. So I am showing it for review and editorial purposes, but I do have a license. It's Origin that hardware info needs to go talk to, not me, in other words. Anyway, if we open this up, the CPU clock speed originally, which is shown in all of these breakouts, originally it was locked to 3,500 megahertz. Actually, you can hear the other problem right now. I'll stand a little closer to it. All I did was open up an application that shows sensors, and it's already getting very loud. So there's a lot of problems with this. The frequency being 1 gigahertz below where it's supposed to be is a massive fuck up. And then the noise is another massive problem. Let's get started with this disappointing thing. This video is brought to you by us and store.gamersnexus.net because we bought this $6,600 computer for our pain and your entertainment. For the next 3 days, we're donating 10% of our store revenue to technology education programs at the Camden Institute local to us. We just had a huge restock of our 3D debug coaster packs for your drinks, one of our highest selling items ever, and we have them in stock and shipping now. We're also running low on our blue and black wireframe mouse mats, and it'll be a few months before the next restock. So if you want one, grab it now, while 10% will benefit Camden's e-waste recycling and tech education programs, and while it'll ship immediately. The mats feature wireframe versions of PC components, a custom blue rubber underside, a high-quality blue-stitched border, and a wide mousing and keyboard surface. Visit store.gamersnexus.net to support our purchases of pre-builts like this one, even when they're train wrecks. They've configured it to ramp the fans to 100% speed when the CPU hits 40 degrees Celsius, which is basically always. So it's completely insane. This is, I mean, you can hear it. And that's what's on the screen. It's not running a test. It's just showing the options to run a test. The next thing I want to show you, this paint job was $350 extra. And we're going to show you the quality of it. For $350, you get something that comes like this, and these chips only widen. I think Vitaly behind the camera, as a car guy, is feeling pain watching me chip the paint off, shaking his head. So this is what happens as you continue interacting with it, which is unfortunate because the dust filter is behind it. So this will get damaged, and it's at a point now, ours, where you can actually see it with the panel still on the case. That's where we're at with this thing. But there's more. So we bought this thing to review, but also we wanted to use it as a production machine here because we were thinking, well, we can get 2 for 1. We'll have a high-end computer that's already built, and all we do is put it at someone's desk and they can start using it to edit videos. What we actually got was like a half for 1 because it's created an incredible amount of work. Weird assortment of parts. Some of these were forced upon us when we were choosing the other parts, so their configurator has some specific triggers that cause you to choose one part versus another. One of those is water cooling forces 12 ML120 fans. So you have 1 here, there's 3 more here, that's 4, and we're up to 8, and then we're up to 12 with that. And it's insane. It's totally unnecessary, but it's fine if they run them on a competently designed fan curve, which they don't. And also, there was no option for RGB. You could only do the 12 ML120 base model fans. So as for being a little bit of a weird assortment of parts, basically, it's a B550 motherboard. That was the default option when we bought it. It has a 5800X3D CPU under the block here. The GPU is a 3080 10 gigabyte card, and it's got 32 gigabytes of RAM through 2 sticks, DDR4 3200. There's a 10 gig NIC, and there's a lot of water cooling. As for why we chose these parts, so we bought it last year, and when we bought it, the parts were the most recent high-end parts. So as we look at value today, what we're actually going to be comparing against for pricing is pricing of these discrete components at the time we ordered this system, not prices of today. So that the goal of that is to see, is Corsair and Origin, are they providing a good value for you, looking at the historical pricing in a time capsule of when this was built. Now, if we check prices of comparable parts back at the time we bought this thing, which was May of 2022, the cost to DIY the system would have been about $3,900. Origin's was $6,000, with an extra $600 bump for taxes and miscellaneous fees. So markup here, assuming Origin pays retail, which it doesn't because Corsair owns it, so it gets some of these parts closer to cost. But assuming that it does to be charitable, that's a markup of about $2,125 US, ignoring tax, or about 35% margin. It's not an insane margin as a percentage, but it is insane as an absolute value, especially considering they're likely closer to 50% than they are 35% once factoring in volume pricing and cost for Corsair parts. But value is not necessarily what you go for if you buy a $6,000 computer. Probably the customer for this is buying it because they're thinking, excuse me, I'm hosting here. They're buying it because, this is really distracting. But this is one of the problems. So for someone who's buying, not because of value, but because they just want something that works out of the box, this will not serve that purpose. And at $6,000, it doesn't serve the other purpose either, which is the customer base who says, I'm willing to deal with some bullshit, but it needs to be cheap. So it doesn't meet either requirement, and that's a problem. Now, in addition to all this, we have a separate in-depth teardown video coming up for this insanely complex system. We've never done a teardown of a pre-built, hard-lined machine before, so it's a lot of fun. It actually highlights the more competent aspects of what Origin did as well, which is crazy meticulous cable management. I mean, that was the best part of the machine by far, so we're gonna explore that in a separate one. But here we're focused on the quality and the review. Let's start with the obvious technical problems. Number one. Number two, the 5800X3D was running below the boost frequency out of the box. And it was in a massive way. We have some benchmarks for that. They basically shipped on BIOS version 1.Z4, and 1.70 resolves this issue. There were also some other ones in between that resolved it, but that was the biggest problem that they had. Now, before we revealed this issue with the MSI MEG B550 Unify and its BIOS to Corsair, we asked Corsair's representative, who represents Origin as well, the following question. Our email said, does Origin PC have an SOP or a process for testing its PCs upon completion of the build? Can you please detail that process and what parameters are inspected? Corsair replied, without knowing what we were doing yet, with this statement, quote, Origin has a thorough process for testing all new builds. First, an in-house software check is performed versus the customer order to ensure all the correct parts have been installed. We then install an OS and run a stress test and initial benchmark based on OCCT. This involves both a single and multi-core processor test, as well as individual memory, graphics card, and a system power test, which will run different components at different workloads at 100%. This is to ensure power and cooling systems are working correctly. Once complete, we save a record of the tests for each individual system Origin builds. The whole stress test and benchmark process takes 4 to 5 hours and is largely automated. From there, the system goes for final QA to ensure the system passed all tests and performed as expected, as well as a final part and cosmetic check. So all of this is really bad. That is probably the worst possible reply they could send, because it would have actually been better if Corsair replied to us and said, we assemble it and then we just hope it turns on and works when the customer gets it. Because what they're telling us here is they are actually trying kind of hard to find problems, and they're still not finding them. They talk about looking for cosmetic problems. This has cosmetic problems, with the paint especially. They talk about looking for performance issues, and this had at least one massive objective problem with the frequency, and then subjective problems with the noise. So their processes don't work. That's the problem. And that's what's really concerning, because you can fix these issues if you know what you're doing. If you're an end user who gets this and you know how to work a computer, they're resolvable. But you can't fix Corsair and Origin's SOPs. Only they can do that. Anyway, here's the performance cost of all of that oversight. After discovering the clock bug, our performance testing focused on comparing the original BIOS with the newest available public BIOS, or version 1.70, to see what the difference is. For our 1.70 test, we made the same changes that Origin made to the original BIOS settings. So we loaded defaults, we applied the primary XMP, which is what they did, and we set these 6 motherboard-controlled case fans to smart PWM control. We also confirmed that MSI's combo strike was still disabled by default in version 1.70. Starting with a quick 7-zip test, we can already see the clock speeds definitely affect performance. The BIOS Origin shipped averaged 74,170 MIPS in 7-zip compression, or millions of instructions per second, and 90,383 in decompression. So for an update, we saw a 24% and 28% uplift in the 2 tests respectively, when all we did was flash BIOS to a new version and make sure the CPU was operating at the right frequency. Our CPU bench can't be used as an exact comparison since it uses different hardware, better memory, better GPU, less extreme cooling, but the numbers do confirm that flashing the BIOS has put our CPU in the range of normal performance from our benchmarks. Moving to the GN logo render test with Blender rendering using Cycles Renderer, the BIOS update reduced render time by 22% versus the original score of 22 minutes. The new 17-minute render time is again within a reasonable range of the reference result from our CPU bench. Part of our original plan for this system was to use it as an editing station after the review. So bad render performance in applications like Blender would have caused us some very real problems. Up next is Chromium Code Compile. The total build time for Chromium was reduced from 118 minutes to 95 minutes just by updating the BIOS to version 1.7. That's a 20% improvement. Any performance testing on the Origin's part at all would have uncovered this bug. Even something as basic as just running Cinebench and checking against literally AMD's own reference numbers. They didn't even have to run it properly. They could have just looked up the announcement day reference numbers for Cinebench and they would have had the baseline. For our final quick test, we ran TimesByExtreme's CPU benchmark, which is sort of a CPU gaming stand-in. This isn't part of our normal suite, but it's extremely reliable. The uplift here was 27% with the new BIOS, averaging 5,449 points. The original BIOS had extremely consistent results for obvious reasons, with all test passes scoring within a 2-point range. Next, we're going to look at fan ramp and the fan behavior like noise. Choosing Corsair's Hydro X open cooling requires also selecting the Origin PC maximum fan kit, which includes 12 Corsair ML120s and not the RGB kind. At the time we ordered, RGB ones weren't allowed, only these 12 were. The MSI B550 Unify doesn't have anywhere near that many fan connectors, so half are controlled via the case's fan hub connected to one header, while the other half, and the pump actually, are controlled via the Commander Core XT. Both of these, the case and the Core XT, are Corsair products. And there's not a clean division between the two either. The front panel fans are split between the two controllers, so that's weird, but okay. The default fan curve on the sysfan header that Origin used is completely unremarkable. It maxes out at a CPU temperature of 85 degrees Celsius. That gets loud with 12 maglevs, but it's appropriate. The IQ fan curve, on the other hand, is completely bizarre and makes no sense. Each of the fans and the pump have the quiet preset applied, which, according to Corsair's curve editor, maxes out just over 40 degrees Celsius. That's right, we're going to blast the fans at 100% speed. As soon as the CPU hits a temperature, it will probably hit simply existing. That's exactly what we would expect the quiet preset would do. Thanks, Corsair. We haven't plotted the IQ controlled fan speeds in detail because the Commander Core XT doesn't report anything to hardware info, but the ML120s are rated for a maximum of 2400 RPM. Let's see if they can hit that speed. Yep, they work. So at idle, the slower motherboard controlled fans ran at a reasonable 420 RPM, which is what Origin was on when they configured the curve, while the faster IQ set ran at 1330 RPM. Under load, the motherboard group ramped to 1340 RPM, while the IQ group reached 2000 RPM, approaching max speed even with the bugged lower CPU clocks, keeping T-die around 40 degrees Celsius. With the BIOS updated, CPU temperatures climbed to degree that opening a browser window would ramp the IQ fans to max. So on to the thermals. With a full GPU and CPU load and an ambient temperature of 22 degrees Celsius, the CPU held at a ridiculously low 44 degrees Celsius. That's only 15 degrees above idle. And it turns out that locking the CPU to base clocks and then blasting all the fans at max speed keeps things pretty cool. With the 1.7 BIOS update, temperatures held at 71 degrees Celsius. That's still great for a 5800X 3D under full load. But it damn well better be good when considering all the cooling hardware pointed at it and the noise it's creating. Origin has enough thermal headroom to slow the fans down a bit, or they need to reconfigure to something that works smarter, not harder. Here's another chart. As a byproduct of all the fans going into overdrive over minor bumps in CPU temperature, GPU temperatures were tightly controlled. The 3080 leveled out at 38 degrees Celsius on BIOS 1.Z4, with hotspot temperatures of 54 degrees and memory junction at 58. The BIOS update to 1.70 had no significant effect on those temperatures, and that makes sense, because the BIOS update only changed the CPU performance, and the GPU would only be affected by whatever minor amounts of extra heat end up in the loop. So these are impressive results for the GPU, but they need to be, once again, considering the noise and the money. And here's the noise. Even if every fan had been on a normal curve, our Genesis would be loud. The fans aren't on a normal curve though. They're on a special curve. Measured from our standard 20 inches with a 27 dBA noise floor and using the original BIOS, the system idled at 38.9 dBA. Applying a combined CPU and GPU workload immediately brought that up to 51 dBA, which continued to rise gradually to a steady state 56.5 dBA. Remember, CPU temperatures under this workload only reached the low 40s, so this is completely unnecessary. For reference, most coolers we test can keep a reasonable temperature on the CPU at 40 dBA or less, with the same testing methodology too. That's over a 2 times perceived increase to the human ear with Origin's cooling. Adding the next line with the BIOS update, CPU performance returned to the proper level, but so did temperatures. The system idled at the same noise level, but with frequent jumps corresponding to any activity whatsoever from background processes. Under load, the system initially behaved similarly, with a sharp rise to 52.2 dBA, but then continued to rise again up to 58 dBA, with constant spikes to 59. These fan speeds and noise levels are ridiculous for the given temperatures. It's about the same noise level as when a plane is passing. Just kidding, actually Origin's noise level is louder than that, but close enough. These fan speeds and noise levels, they need to be worked on, especially when only 4 of the fans are even attached to the radiator. Time to get into how shipping was handled, since this one's a little unique. Origin shipped 5 days ahead of the schedule it gave us, which is a nice bonus. Our Origin Genesis was shipped freight, and it arrived in Origin, what they call wooden crate armor. That's part of Origin's so-called maximum protection shipping process. It's no trouble for us to receive freight from a semi-truck at a commercial building, but you may need to consider the implications if you're on a tighter residential street. We did take issue, though, with the page's implication that good packaging is an add-on, considering this particular add-on is mandatory. It's Origin's responsibility to get the system to us undamaged, crate armor or not. Advertising that the computer you bought from us won't be broken in shipping isn't really good advertising, or it shouldn't be. Except we placed our order shortly after receiving a couple of very expensive and very broken pre-builts. So we opted for $450 air shipping as well, not included in our earlier price calculations, in the hopes that we'd finally get a functional systems review. Less time in transit means less time to get destroyed. The system arrived undamaged. It was tightly packed in its wooden crate. It had straps securing it to a pallet, so there's basically no way it would ever tip over. They don't put anything on top of it when it looks like this, and so that was good. There were inner layers of foam and cardboard, and around the case itself there was a tight fabric, which may have helped to protect the custom paint job, but we'll get to that. Both side panel hinges were correctly screwed down for shipping, so that's a good attention to detail, but they may have been over-torqued, because we noticed that one of the doors is permanently ajar now, and it squeaks when opening. Inside the system, the GPU and reservoir were supported with some small chunks of foam, but there was no sign of the expanding Instapack foam listed on our invoice. From the crate armor description when we placed our order, quote, Instapack packaging creates a custom mold inside your system to protect your internal components from moving during shipping. This protection is key against your system being dropped or taking any type of shock or impact. Origin confirmed with us after the fact that foam is intentionally excluded, in true I meant to do that fashion, from custom water cooling configurations. Now, we actually agree with this. It makes sense so that it doesn't pull the tubes by accident, but it wasn't explained anywhere, and it was advertised as the opposite. Origin has since corrected its website following our concerns of poor customer communication. Other items were neatly packed around the edges. We got a K55 keyboard with zoned RGB lighting as a free bonus item. There was a t-shirt, a 32GB flash drive, and an uncomfortably thick 370 by 260mm mouse pad that's like almost 8mm in height or something. It's important to note that the flash drive is just swag. It's not a Windows recovery drive, but it could have been. It contained nothing. It's a major lost opportunity for Origin. All of the manuals, I/O shields, and assorted spare parts for retail components were included separately as physical items, as well as a complete set of custom sleeved cables additionally for the RM850X to match the ones in the system. So that was a nice touch. We were unable to find the one Origin out-of-box experience envelope with Velcro hooks or the documentation English thank you letter folded into a sealed envelope Origin PC as listed on the invoice. Origin suggested to us that it would have been contained in a separate box as part of freight, but we have confirmed that we did not receive the manuals, but we did get the envelope. So they almost did it. Only the invoice was in that though. We're assuming one of those would have contained instructions, but our system contained no instructions whatsoever. No quick start guide, no sticker covering the motherboard video ports. And these are further huge oversights on Origin's part because it could have created support requests. There was a warning about removing internal packaging, but most of the internal packaging was missing anyway, so we didn't need that. The good news is that the desktop contained a PDF with refill instructions. We also had problems with the paint job, so going into more detail from earlier, we paid the extra $350 to have only the top, front, and side panels painted pink. We chose this because red wasn't an option, even though red coolant and red sleeved cables were. But pink was closest to red, so we went with it. The panels are fully coated, including all fasteners, as well as the plastic anti-scuff pads that would have been unpainted on the stock case. There's already heavy flaking around the bottom edge of the front panel that's worsened as we remove and replace it, and this was true upon first removal as well. You'd have to take this panel off to clean the dust filters, so this is a particularly bad problem. At this point, even touching the paint here causes flaking. There's also some white residue over the paint in some of the vent holes on the right side of the case that looks like peeling or improper painting of some kind. At the time we ordered, black, white, blue, purple, pink, and yellow were offered, but that list has since been cut down to the stock Corsair black and white. Cable management inside the case is obsessive, and that's a compliment. It had an incredible amount of zip ties. As usual, this is completely hidden by cable covers and an opaque steel side panel. We actually complained about the cable covers in our 7000D airflow review, and we feel a little bit vindicated here. The magnetic door in the Genesis won't shut properly, even with the world's most meticulous cable management, done by the people who make the case. And it's already rubbed pink paint off the inside of the side panel. The liquid cooling loop deserves some praise despite the other problems. This is a semi-custom build, after all, but we saw no significant problems with the loop itself. Origin claims to drain all air before shipping, which isn't technically possible, but they got pretty close. There was air in the CPU block and in the reservoir when we unpacked it, but of course all the air eventually circulated into the reservoir after running the system. Finally, software and bloatware. There's no bloatware, so that's awesome. Excellent job, Origin. Thank you for getting that part right. There's no Norton or McAfee bullshit, and that means that they're not getting kickbacks from those software companies, and it means that your OS is pretty clean. After booting and going through Windows 11 setup, we were greeted by a desktop that contains 2 PDFs. There's some genuinely helpful tools pre-installed as well, like CPU-Z and Hardware Info 64, and those are in the Origin PC C drive folder. There were also shortcuts to WebRoot and TeamViewer, but they weren't pre-installed, which we appreciate. There's the usual Windows 11 bloatware, but the only extra on top of that is Corsair iQ. All drivers are installed and they were up to date relative to our order date, including drivers for the StarTech 10 gigabit NIC which we only ordered because we wanted to use it as a trap to see if they forgot them, but they got it. We had no problems with the Samsung OEM M.2 boot drive. The 870 QVO 1TB SATA SSD is a QLC drive though, and performance drops off a cliff after the SLC cache is saturated. But in the process of setting up our tests, we found it could write 40 gigabytes of a large transfer before the speeds dropped, and even then it kept writing at 80 megabytes per second. It's a lot better than the budget drives we've seen, like the Intel 660p. And finally, our Genesis included a what they called free IQ RGB lighting with Corsair Node Pro. The system already included a Commander Core XT, and the lighting on the CPU block, the RAM, the LED strips, the GPU block, and the reservoir worked well enough to start with. But when we launched IQ for the first time, which is pre-installed, it turned all of the lights off. We had to manually re-enable the lighting. Not a big deal, but kind of weird. Origin also included an NZXT internal USB hub to handle all the extra RGB devices. We don't envy the techs who had to wire the system, but they did an excellent job. A lot of this is pretty bad. It's made worse by the fact that Origin prints the word premium all over the place for this computer, which implies a certain level of quality. And the implication is that you do nothing when you open the box other than plug it in and go. And again, that's who the customer base is. When we review things, we look at who are they selling it to? Do they meet the expectations of that customer? If this were a $437 iBuyPower computer, your expectation is it probably works, and if it does, you're pretty happy. But they need to do more than this at Origin. The other thing that's really concerning to us is the more systemic problem, because the issues here, it's not like something like the GPU fell out of the slot in shipping. That would suck, but the test there would be, how is the support? Not, did shipping destroy it? The things they screwed up, though, are not shipping damage. It's, does the CPU run at the advertised frequency? And AMD has its own reference numbers that it publishes. They could have checked against with Cinebench and immediately seen it was problematic. And so that they have processes to look for these problems, but they did not identify them, is bad. But they told us they're implementing scripts to help identify these problems like frequency in the future. The issue we have with that, we have a lot of scripts too. And you can build all the programming and scripts you want to do validation and check for errors. But ultimately, the operators who are using those scripts have to be trained on what does any of it mean. It doesn't matter how much data you collect if the people looking at it don't know what it means. And with scripting, with software detection of behaviors of computers, it changes constantly. You have to keep up with updates on it as new hardware rolls out, or you're not going to be checking the right things. And so simply saying, we have scripts now, that's not enough. That doesn't give me any hope or relief that this issue will not occur again. What they need to do is say, we are deploying scripts. Also, by the way, we have a new training program, and we're going to have someone sit down with each of the QC techs and explain what all of this stuff is and what needs absolutely to be correct. So it's like what SkyTech had, where although you could, as Origin or Corsair, say, our QC guy screwed us over on this one, he signed off on it and shipped it to a customer who happened to be GN, realistically, the fault falls at a higher level in Origin, not on whoever's doing the QC. It falls on whoever built the QC processes and failed to train the employees what to look for. And this stuff, it's not trivial, to be fair, but that's sort of the job of the company that sells the $6,000 computer, is to teach what to look for. So we reported all of the issues to Origin's parent company, Corsair, and Corsair sent us a launch statement. They said, quote, "Hi Steve, here at Origin PC, we pride ourselves on attention to detail and the quality and performance of the systems we produce, and are disappointed that the system you ordered didn't live up to the high standards we hold ourselves to. At the time the system was built in May 22, we used a wide-ranging stability and performance testing process with manual validation, but unfortunately this missed the issue with the processor boost frequency. While this would have been resolved by a BIOS flash, our customers expect great performance out of the box, as do we." So for this, we also had some problems with the tone, because it's almost saying it's not that big of a deal, you just flash the BIOS and it works. But that's sort of what makes it bad, because it's so easy to fix, and they still didn't do it. They continued, quote, in late 2022, we switched to a more automated quality control and system performance monitoring system based on OCCT that would not allow an Origin system to ship exhibiting this same issue today. After your raising of this issue, we have checked all our testing logs for similarly configured builds built in 2022 and identified a small number of potentially similarly affected customers. We've since reached out to those customers to ensure their PCs are performing correctly, as well as extending their warranties by an extra year as a courtesy. We acknowledge the issues you've highlighted with the system's custom paint and appreciate that as a premium option, it should have been completed to a higher standard. We pride ourselves on our 24/7 customer support and have assisted customers in the past with similar concerns to a satisfactory result for all parties. Due to the variability inherent in paint customization and the high standard of finish our customers expect, Origin PC discontinued custom paint options since June 2022. This is one of the better responses because that's before we contacted them about problems. So it says that they are able to identify issues on their own and independently resolve them without massive external pressure. So that's good. They next wrote a line about their shipping processes and why it didn't contain the Instapack foam. We agreed with all of their commentary there, and we're happy with the resolution on that one, but we talked about that part earlier. Now next, I said, regarding your experience with fan noise, while this would again be something we would have corrected via customer support, we appreciate that out-of-the-box experience is key and have since optimized IQ profiles on shipping systems to raise the temperatures at which fans speed up and thus reducing fan noise. And that's sort of the line where we had more problems with it because they're basically saying we have 24/7 customer support, all you had to do was call them. But that's not the answer. The answer isn't, well, we should be able to build it incompetently, and then if a customer notices that it sucks, they can call us and we'll fix it then. The answer is we will not screw it up in the first place. And the biggest issue, as we pointed out with the 1 gigahertz frequency drop, is it still performs pretty well. And depending on how savvy you are, and the average pre-built buyer probably at this price class has enough knowledge to know what type of part they're getting, high end, low end, but maybe not enough to know the 5800X3D is missing 24% performance in this benchmark. Because if it's significantly better than what they had, that's all they're going to look for. So the concern, once again, is that this is very easy to overlook, even if you're fairly experienced in computers, if you're not going back over all the work they did, which you shouldn't have to do. So for the last line, it continues, and they say, we appreciate your experience with this Origin PC has been less than optimum, and the system shipped with several issues. We would like to highlight that all of the issues you found could and would have been resolved by our 24/7 customer service and tech support teams. Again, that we don't like that answer. With thousands of customers every year, things can't always go right, but we pride ourselves on offering a high standard of support to resolve issues when they do occur. To close, we want to thank you for taking the time to look at an Origin PC. While we have already made many improvements to our processes and systems, we assure you that your feedback and findings will very much be taken on board for future system builds. We look forward to working with you again in the future. And that's really where it ends for that one. So the correct answer probably is just, well, we f***ed that up, sorry. And then here's a list of these bullet points of what we've done to our SOP to improve. We've reached out to customers affected, we're fixing it. Because that's what I would do in that situation, I think. If there's really not much you can argue when you have a customer who spent this much money. And it should be perfect, ideally, if it's a $400 computer also. But it's just sort of the expectation that you set, where a small, like system fan noise on a $400 computer, most people probably are going to go, I mean, I was on a budget. I don't know. Maybe this is just how it is. And that's the end of it. But when you're buying full custom loop water, hard line tubing and everything, with this many fans and radiators, just the expectation's not met and the performance wasn't good. They failed to check basic things like processor frequency. So we're a little concerned about Origin in general being able to competently ship a system because although yes, as Origin says, you're gonna have errors with products, it's really just how do you deal with it. And hopefully they're dealing with it right, but we're really gonna have to check in again later is where this one goes. So we'll buy another computer undercover at some point in the future. It'll be somewhat distant, that way they don't know when to look for it. and we'll revisit it and see if they do better. But the fact that this landed on us, though, says that it wasn't just our computer. Like, this isn't mistakes happen. This entire line was problematic, which is why they found other customers with that processor problem. It's not just an error, it's the wrong BIOS. So that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. If you want to help us be able to actually do stuff like this, go to store.gamersnexus.net and grab some of our t-shirts, our mod mats for PC building, toolkits, coaster packs for a really nice set of PC themed coasters, or something else, and it'll go towards purchasing more pre-builts of different prices, hopefully that don't all suck. Thanks for watching. We'll see you all next time.